everybody, I'm Shaylin Richards, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys about Robert Kennedy's speech on Martin Luther King Jr.'s death. To start off, the soapstone is the speaker was Robert F. Kennedy. The occasion was April 4th, 1968. The audience were the citizens of Indianapolis. The purpose was to inform his audience of the tragic event while motivating them to continue Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. The subject was Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. The tone was understanding, respectful, moving, and motivating. So for some context, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. Robert F. Kennedy had a campaign rally that night in Indianapolis and decided to give an impromptu speech to his audience. He originally started by asking a city official, do they know about Martin Luther King? And the city official responded saying that they were going to leave it up to him to inform the citizens. And after, there was no rioting in Indianapolis, but there were many other riots in other locations. Paragraph 1 says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm only going to talk to you for just a minute or so this evening, because I have some very sad news for all of you. Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis, Tennessee." Analyzing that was the introduction to his speech. He asked the audience to lower their signs to show respect. So because they were at a campaign rally, they would have been political posters and signs, and he didn't want to bring politics into what happened. He spoke directly to the audience by using the word you. He repeats all multiple times, demonstrating that he's being inclusive, and that was the point of the civil rights movement, which MLK was a big leader of. And he shows raw emotion. We see him stuttering in the beginning, and it is easy to tell that this was not planned, and we'll see him stutter further throughout the speech. Paragraph 2 says, "Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and hatred and a desire for revenge." We see Robert F. Kennedy being inclusive again by choosing to use we, and I'm not going to mention this further because we will see it throughout the entirety of the speech. He defines Martin Luther King Jr.'s purpose to remind everyone of what he desired to see. He has a very understanding tone. He understands why they're upset and what their motivation is, and this helps him to connect to his audience better. Paragraph 3 says, "We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks and whites amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another, or we can make an effort as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that has spread across our land with an effort to understand compassion and love." And in analyzing that, he says that we could either stick with the past or move on to a better future, and with the tone, you can tell that he wants to move our country forward. And he uses Martin Luther King and pathos to persuade his audience to continue MLK's legacy, and he uses that through diction. Paragraph 4 says, "For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I'd only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. And I included paragraph 5 in this because paragraph 5 is only 2 sentences. And it says, but we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. Analyzing that, he uses an anecdote to connect with his audience. He sympathizes with his audience and demonstrates ethos because he has been through it before. This also shows pathos in a way. And he shows that it is possible to move on. And again, he demonstrates that we can and should move forward as a country, which is repetition. And he says effort because it won't be easy, but it is possible. Paragraph 5 says, my favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus, and he once wrote, even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until, in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. So the poem shows an illusion because it references God, and he uses the poem to show that even in the toughest times, wisdom can break through, and the poem is calming and encourages looking forward. Paragraph 6 says, what we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, and a feeling of justice towards those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. Analyzing that, he uses the word hatred and love multiple times, which demonstrates strong diction and also repetition, and he states what we need, which is unity, love, wisdom, and compassion. And paragraph 7 says, so I ask you tonight to return home to say a prayer for the family of Martin Luther King. Yeah, it's true, but more importantly to say a prayer for our own country, which all of us love, a prayer for understanding and that compassion of which I spoke. Analyzing that, he mentions religious beliefs. He mentions Martin Luther King Jr.'s family, which shows pathos because everybody has a family and we all can understand the feeling of loss even if it isn't to that extent. And he uses very strong diction. Paragraph 8 says, we can do well in this country. We will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past, but we will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It's not the end of lawlessness. And it's not the end of disorder. So, paragraph 8 analysis is, we have made it through before and we will make it through again. It is not new to us. We've done it all before, like it said in the previous bullet. And we see repetition again, talking about how America can move further and forward as a country. And he gives the audience hope while being realistic at the same time. And paragraph 9 says, but the vast majority of white people and the vast majority of black people in this country want to live together, want to improve the quality of our life, and want justice for all human beings that abide in our land. And that he uses a lot of emotion in this paragraph, which demonstrates pathos, and he does that by having a really strong diction, like using words such as bloodshed, and it's saying that most citizens want to live as one rather than separated. Paragraph 10 says, and let's dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that, and say a prayer for our country, and for our people. Thank you very much. So he has an illusion by referencing the Greeks. He demonstrates repetition again because he references religion and praying, which he's done multiple times, and he thanks the audience for listening, which demonstrates kindness and being humble, and it helps him connect to his audience a lot more. And this speech changed the world because Robert Kennedy demonstrated how powerful words and rhetoric can be. And he proved that a difference can still be made without Martin Luther King Jr., which gave people hope, which they did not previously have after hearing about what happened to him. So even without him being a major figure, they can still make a difference. And thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this speech as much as I did. And yeah, bye everybody.